On a rainy Monday morning in a small town, Claire sat at her kitchen table, looking out at the droplets racing down the window. It was the kind of day that slowed time. She sighed, pulling her sweater tighter around her shoulders. The silence in her home felt heavy, almost as if it were wrapping around her like a thick blanket. Her phone buzzed on the table, breaking the stillness. She glanced at it, her heart skipping a beat. It was a message from Michael, her old friend from college. Distant lately, wrapped up in his own life, but today he had reached out. With a mix of curiosity and unease, she opened his message. "Hey Claire, can we talk?" That phrase sent a wave of emotions crashing over her. Help. It was a word that always held weight. Claire felt her heart race. What could he possibly need? An image of Michael's determined face came to mind. He had that intensity about him, always driven, always focused. But now in her mind's eye, there was something different. Something desperate. Before she could reply, another message popped up. "Check your email, I sent you a direct order." Claire's brow furrowed. A direct order. The words felt strange coming from him. Their friendship had always been casual, easygoing. They'd laughed together, shared dreams, but now it felt different. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the screen. Something about this felt intense, like standing at the edge of a steep cliff. She opened her inbox, the familiar layout of icons and headers greeting her. Heart thudding, she scrolled through her new messages. Her breath hitched in her throat. Like a magnet, she clicked it open. Inside, Michael had laid out a plan, a complex intertwining of ideas that revolved around a project he was developing. It was ambitious, and it sent a rush of adrenaline through her. "Claire," the email began, "I need someone I can trust to help me launch this project. You know, it's been weighing on me for months. Your expertise in marketing would be invaluable." She read through the rest, the urgency pulsing through his words. As she absorbed everything, Claire felt a strange mix of excitement and anxiety. Did he truly see her as more than just a friend? Did he really believe in her abilities? This wasn't just an invitation, it felt like a lifeline. Claire chewed her lip, drifting into thought. Memories surfaced, late-night study sessions, shared secrets, and laughter echoing through the library. They had always pushed each other to be better, but this was different. This was a call to arms, yet she hesitated. What did he mean by direct order? As much as she wanted to help, something felt off. Was this really about the project, or was there more lurking beneath the surface? Doubt gnawed at her, a question hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Was she ready to step back into that world with him? Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her coffee mug, warming her hands. It was a good day for reflection. Rain pattered gently against the window, a steady reminder to gather her thoughts. She could almost hear the echoes of late-night conversations about dreams and ambitions, the way they'd shared a vision of the future. Finally, she typed up a response, her fingers hovering above the keys for a moment. "Michael, I'm interested." She pressed send, her mind racing as she anticipated his reply. Minutes latched on like hours, and just as she was about to lose her nerve and forget the whole thing, her phone chirped again. Michael's reply was swift. "Meet me at the cafe, 5 p.m. The message would normally feel harmless, but today it sent shivers down Claire's spine. The cafe had always been their favorite haven, a cozy spot where laughter filled the air over hot cups of coffee. But now, as the clock ticked closer to 5, it felt different, charged with expectation. As she prepared to leave, Claire caught a glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror. Her reflection stared back, searching for resolve. The person looking back wore uncertainty in her eyes, but also a flicker of anticipation. She knew that whatever happened tonight would change everything. At the cafe, the scent of coffee wrapped around her like a warm embrace. Soft chatter filled the air as she stepped inside. Her gaze swept over the room, finding Michael already seated at their usual table, looking lost in thought. He was leaning forward, his elbows resting on the table, fingers intertwined. When their eyes met, he visibly relaxed. He stood up, and the familiar warmth surged inside Claire's chest. Michael walked over, a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. "Of course, you said it was important," she replied, trying to match his lightness but feeling the weight of the moment. They sat down together, and Claire felt the buzz of energy surrounding them. Michael spoke earnestly about the project, detailing everything he had put together. The plans ignited Claire's imagination, sparking that familiar thrill of working towards something meaningful. As he outlined his visions, she could see it, that passion that had always drawn her to him. But underneath it all, an undercurrent hung in the air, something unsaid, unspoken. The thrill of the project contrasted sharply with the tension simmering between them. "Claire," he said, leaning in, his expressive eyes catching hers, "I need you on this, not just for your skills, but because I trust you." Her heart fluttered, a mixture of fear and hope. The question slipped from her lips before she could catch it. The moment felt heavy, like a fragile glass teetering on the edge of a table. Michael waved a hand, brushing aside her worries. "You underestimate yourself. I've seen what you can do." His words hung between them, a promise dripping with sincerity. The air charged with unspoken feelings, things they had both kept buried beneath layers of friendship. As they exchanged ideas, every word poured fuel onto the fire that was growing between them. Claire felt the walls she had built around her heart start to crack. But before she could lean in and embrace this shift, Michael's expression changed. His eyes darkened slightly, lines forming on his forehead. "There's something else," he said, voice lowering. This project is tied to my family, to our past. I need to honor that. Claire's pulse quickened. She understood the weight of family expectations. It was something they both knew all too well. She wanted to help even more now, but that weight felt daunting. Would they be able to support each other through it? She asked tentatively, her curiosity pushing through her uncertainty. Michael took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts like scattered leaves in a windstorm. This project has consequences. If we succeed, it could change everything for my family. I'm counting on you to be part of that success. Her emotions tangled fear, hope, excitement, anxiety. This wasn't just a project, it was a lifeline for him, a chance to prove himself. And in helping him, she was stepping into a world fraught with pressure and expectations. The clock ticked on, the conversations around them fading into a background hum. Claire locked eyes with Michael, feeling their intertwined destinies in that moment. "I'm in," she said, her voice steady. Michael smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his face, and it felt like a weight had lifted off both their shoulders. Sense of purpose rippled through her. Whatever storms lay ahead, together they would face them. As the evening wore on, they found themselves lost in laughter and ideas, the connection deepening with each shared moment. Claire felt that old spark reignite, the bond they had forged returning stronger than before, but now with a hint of something new, something both exhilarating and terrifying. But unknown to Claire, lurking in the shadows, was doubt, both hers and Michael's. Would trust be enough to weather the challenges ahead? Could they hold each other steady against the tide of pressures that awaited? The night ended with a promise between them, a commitment to each other and to the project that lay ahead. It was a beginning, but also a plunge into uncharted waters. As she stepped out into the damp night air, Claire looked up at the sky, the stars hidden behind a veil of clouds. Paths lay open before her, dark yet inviting, and she took a deep breath, ready to embrace what would come. It was a seemingly ordinary day, gray clouds hanging low in the sky, when Rachel's phone buzzed, vibrating like an electric pulse against the table. She glanced at the screen, her curiosity piqued. A notification from an email popped up, but it wasn't just any email. It was from Adam, her former mentor and someone she had looked up to since her college days. Their paths had drifted apart over time, but she still remembered the passion he had for his work, the way he could inspire a room full of people with just a few words. She hesitated, heart racing at the thought of his name. What could he possibly want now? Rachel took a deep breath and opened the email. Her pulse quickened. The subject line alone ignited a whirlwind of emotions. Was this an actual request for help or just a professional courtesy? She felt a flicker of excitement intermingle with an unspeakable anxiety. She dove into the email, her pulse a steady drum in her ears. "Rachel," it began, "I hope you're doing well." Her fingertips tingled, the words wrapped around her like a warm embrace, but she could sense an underlying intensity. Adam continued, outlining a new project that combined elements of crisis management and community outreach. "I believe that you are the perfect person to help me navigate this," he wrote. "This is more than just a job, it's a chance to make a difference. Can you meet me tomorrow?" As she read, a sense of responsibility gripped her. She had always admired Adam's passion for social issues and his knack for drawing people together. But what struck her was his use of the phrase direct order, a term that sent chills of apprehension through her. Did he really expect her to drop everything? Is this about me needing help, or was it about coercing her into something bigger? Rachel closed her eyes for a moment, taking a breath. She had faced pressure before. She had climbed mountains in her career, but something about this felt different, more personal. She typed a quick response, her fingers dancing over the keys. "I'm interested, let's meet." The day dragged into a slow crawl. She could barely concentrate at work, the email replaying over and over in her mind. What exactly did he want? Was this an opportunity or a trap? Perhaps it was both. She felt the heavy weight of expectation settle on her shoulders. Finally, the next day arrived. Rachel stood in front of the cafe, a cozy little spot with warm lights twinkling like stars. It felt like a strange collision of anticipation and dread. As she walked in, the familiar aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled her lungs, soothing her racing heart. Adam was already at their usual corner table, a look of concentration etched across his features. When he saw her, he stood up, a mix of relief and urgency in his eyes. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice steady but laced with a hint of something desperate. Rachel asked, her tone a careful blend of curiosity and caution. She scooted into her seat, chewing on the meaning behind his words. "Let's grab coffee first," Adam suggested, as if grounding himself in the scent and warmth of the cafe. They moved to the counter, the barista greeting them with a smile as they ordered their drinks. As they settled back at the table, the atmosphere shifted, thick with unspoken words. Adam leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Rachel, I'm going to be honest. The project I mentioned is critical." He paused, letting his words soak in. Rachel's heart lurched. This was real. The weight of the struggles surrounding them poured in like a flood, tangible and frightening. "There's a budget shortfall," he continued, a spark of desperation igniting in his eyes, "and I need to rally people for donations, volunteers, and resources." The urgency in his voice struck her deep. "But why me?" she pressed, searching for clarity. "Because you understand people," he replied, sincerity layering into his words. You have a gift for connecting with them, for moving them to act. I can't do this alone. Despite the chaos swirling within her thoughts, she could sense the flicker of something more, something connecting them once more. Amid the distractions of their lives, their shared values emerged. This wasn't just a professional ask, it felt deeply personal. A moment passed, thick with tension. Rachel felt like she was at the crossroads again, but this time the stakes were higher. I need time to think, she finally said, surprised at her own understanding of the situation. The responsibility loomed over her, heavier than she anticipated. Adam nodded, the determination in his eyes flickering like a candle flame. Take your time, but remember, these families can't wait. Drained from their conversation, Rachel stepped outside, the brisk air striking her skin like a splash of cold water. She wandered down the street, trying to process everything. The weight of the world felt as if it rested squarely on her shoulders. Every step she took, her mind rattled. Could she do this? She had always been the person people came to in times of trouble, but was this level of responsibility something she was ready for? Friends would often tell her she had a natural talent. Rachel could listen, offer empathy, and motivate others to act. But this was different. It was raw and heavy, bound with emotion and urgency. It pressed against her chest like a physical weight. People will be counting on you, she mumbled to herself, the quiet street providing an echo of her thoughts. As uncertainty dripped into her core, she decided to check on her memories. With Adam, a warmth spread through her, full of laughter and late-night brainstorming sessions. They made decisions that changed lives, not just for themselves, but for others. The choice was becoming clear. That night, unable to shake the feeling, Rachel grabbed her laptop and began researching the causes Adam mentioned. Families struggling to stay afloat tugged at her heart. She recognized the fear and futility they might feel, just like her, always searching for a way out. Tears stung her eyes as she read through the stories of people in need. She knew she couldn't ignore the call for help. It resonated deeply within her soul. The next morning, she opened her inbox, fingers trembling slightly as she penned another reply to Adam. "I'm in. Let's make a difference," she typed, the words coming to life as she hit send. Just as she pressed the button, she felt the weight lighten a fraction. It was daunting, but perhaps together they could create something powerful. Maybe this was the opportunity she needed to step out of her comfort zone, to ignite the spark in her that had dimmed over the years. Within minutes, Adam replied, "Wonderful news. Meet me at the community center tomorrow at 10 a.m. We'll map out our next steps." Rachel read the words over and over, a smile creeping onto her face. They weren't just ideas, it was an action plan, a chance to heal and inspire. The anxiety she had felt turned into determination, a fire ignited within. The next day arrived, filled with new possibilities. As she walked through the community center doors, Rachel saw Adam waiting for her, excitement glinting in his eyes. "This is it," he said, motioning to a massive whiteboard covered in colorful sticky notes and drawn-out timelines. They spent hours brainstorming, their chemistry firing back to life, the memories of their synergy spilling into the present. Rachel felt the walls she had built around herself begin to crumble as they mapped out their plan, thoughts flowing smoothly between them. This was what she was meant to do. Days turned into weeks, and each meeting brought them closer together, not just as colleagues, but as allies in a fight against despair. They dove into their work, gathering support from local businesses, engaging potential volunteers, and cultivating community interest. And as Rachel poured her heart and energy into the project, something beautiful began to blossom. People responded, showing up in droves, willing to lend a hand. The air vibrated with hope and renewed purpose. It felt like a movement had begun to take shape. Along the way, Rachel discovered parts of herself she had long forgotten. In moments of doubt, Adam was there, grounding her with his fierce belief in the mission. Each obstacle only tightened their bond, and their shared vision illuminated the path forward. One evening, sitting on the old wooden steps of the community center under a sky illuminated by stars, they spoke openly. "You've really stepped into your power," Adam said, off-filling his voice. "I wouldn't have done it without you," Rachel replied, the sincerity in her words settling like a warm blanket. The moment crackled with something unsaid, an energy that sparked between them. Weeks passed, and the pressing urgency melded into something achievable. The campaign was in full swing, and Rachel knew they were on the verge of something monumental. The direct orders Adam had given weren't just about work. They represented a belief in the power of connection to change lives. On the eve of their big community event, a gathering for families to celebrate the support they had mobilized, Rachel felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Every blood, sweat, and tear had been worthwhile. As she walked through the center, preparing final touches, her phone buzzed with a message from Adam. "Meet me outside," it said. A thrill rushed through her as she made her way to the entrance. The night was crisp, the stars twinkling above. When she reached the doors, Adam was waiting, his face lit by the faint glow of city lights. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said genuinely. "None of this would have happened without you," Rachel replied, her heart pounding. "Because I believed in you," he said, stepping closer, the distance between them charged with unspoken words. In that moment, they stood on the brink of a new chapter, the tension between them rising like a wave about to crash. Rachel's breath caught in her throat, a softness enveloping her as she realized that this journey had led not just to a passion for social change, but to something she hadn't fully acknowledged yet. "Let's keep this momentum going," she whispered, a smile breaking through, her heart bursting with hope. "Together we can change lives," Adam replied, his voice thick with emotion. With that, their journey bound by dreams and fueled by passion continued to unfold, weaving a tapestry of connection that promised more than just a campaign. It was a partnership destined to explore every facet of life and the endless possibilities they could uncover together. As they stood side by side, the world around them fell into place, a promise that both their futures would be forever altered by the choices they had made. The sound of the doorbell echoed through the quiet house, startling Sarah from her thoughts. It was late evening, shadows stretching across the walls, and she hadn't been expecting anyone. Still, curiosity pulled her from the couch, and she moved cautiously to the door. Standing there was Michael, an old friend and mentor from her college days. He looked different somehow, more serious, his brow crinkled with concern. He asked, his voice carrying an edge that made her heart race. Sarah replied, stepping back to let him inside. The familiar warmth of their friendship enveloped her, but a knot formed in her stomach. What was weighing on him? They settled into the living room, the blue light of the television flickering in the background. Sarah noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way he rubbed his hands together as if trying to warm them from an unseen chill. "I'm glad to see you," he said finally, looking her directly in the eyes. "Yeah, life gets in the way," she said, forcing a smile. "What's up?" Michael sighed, his eyes momentarily drifting to the floor. "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important." The words sent a jolt through her. Even in college, he had always been the driving force, the passionate one who pulled her into various initiatives. She asked, her curiosity mingling with concern. "It's about a community initiative," he began, voice low. "There's been a surge in local families struggling since the economic downturn." Sarah listened intently, the heaviness of his words settling into her chest. "That sounds like a lot," she said, feeling a mix of admiration and dread. "I know this isn't an easy ask," he continued, locking eyes with her. "But I need someone I trust, someone who can help lead the outreach. I can't do this alone." A direct order, the phrase hung in the air, sharp and unexpected. Sarah's heart raced. It felt like the old days when they worked together on campus projects, but this was different. This was real life with real stakes. I don't know, Michael," she stuttered, taking a step back. "I get it," he said, his tone softening. "But these families don't have time for hesitation. I need you to jump in with me." His sincerity wrapped around her, tugging at the part of her that longed to make a difference. In that moment, Sarah felt a burst of urgency, a desire to say yes. But doubts rattled around in her mind like loose change. Could she really step back into that leadership role again? The last few years had been unpredictable, challenging. She had almost forgotten her own strength. As if sensing her internal battle, Michael pressed on. "Think of it like we used to. We made changes then. People respected our work." The memories of their collegiate activism danced through her mind, bright and vivid. Late-night strategy sessions, laughter, and that electric feeling of community involvement washed over her. Finally, she drew a deep breath. "Okay, I'll think about it, but no guarantees, all right?" Michael nodded, a smile breaking through his concern like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Of course." After he left, Sarah sat in silence, the echoes of his words lingering. She stared into the darkness of her living room, the weight of his request pressing down on her. It was more than just a social issue. This was about lives, families, hope. The thought made her pulse quicken. That night sleep came fitfully. Shadows stretched in her mind, the faces of families she'd never met yet somehow felt deeply connected to. After tossing and turning, she finally pulled out her laptop, fingers trembling as she typed community outreach programs into the search bar. Each click drew her deeper into the need unfolding in her city. Hours slipped away as stories of struggle and resilience unfolded on the screen. Families crammed into small apartments, children losing stability, parents working multiple jobs just to scrape by. Each story broke her heart a little more, compelling her to act. But could she really take on something this monumental after so much time away from that world? At last, as dawn broke and sunlight spilled across her room, Sarah made her decision. She opened her email, fingers trembling as she began writing. "Michael, I'm in." She pressed send, her heart racing with anticipation. The day passed in a blur of excitement and dread. Sarah found herself pacing her apartment, waiting for Michael's reply, her mind racing with possibilities. What if they failed? What if he relied on her too heavily and she let him down again? Eventually, her phone buzzed. "Great, meet me at the community center tomorrow at 9. The sun had barely risen when she arrived at the community center. Its once bright paint was chipped and faded, but the atmosphere buzzed with energy as volunteers milled about, organizing supplies for the outreach program. Michael was already there, a stack of flyers in his arms. He said, his face lighting up when he saw her. It warmed her heart, even as nerves danced in her stomach. Together, they stepped into a conference room filled with tables and chairs. Michael laid out their plans, showing her the proposed outreach strategy he had developed. Charts, graphs, and a timeline painted a picture of their goals. First, we need to establish trust within the community, he explained, pointing to a map dotted with red circles marking problem areas. We can't hope to make an impact unless people believe in us. It felt daunting, but the more Michael talked about their strategy, the way they planned to partner with local businesses, schools, and community leaders, the more passionate she became. They spent hours brainstorming, feeding off each other's ideas like a spark igniting a flame. As Sarah stepped back from the meeting, she felt exhilarated. This felt like a revival of something she thought she had lost. The spark was back. They took the next steps together, planning community meetings and organizing fundraisers. Weeks turned into a whirlwind of activity. Sarah felt the energy flowing through her. Late nights working on proposals, meetings that turned into brainstorming sessions, interactions filled with laughter and camaraderie. The more she dove in, the more alive she felt. In those moments, she and Michael worked closely together. The connection that had surfaced in college blossomed again, and it added a layer to their teamwork that neither had expected. There were occasional glances, shared smiles, and moments of vulnerability that cloaked the air around them with an almost palpable tension. It was during one of these moments, as they huddled over a table filled with charts and plans, that she realized how far they had come. They were no longer just old friends, but partners united in a mission to support their community. One evening, while they were discussing the flyer designs at Sarah's apartment, she caught him staring at her, his eyes a swirling mixture of admiration and something deeper. "You've come so far since college," he said quietly, his voice sending tingles down her spine. Her heart swelled at the compliment. "I'm grateful for your push." Then, in a moment she hadn't expected, he reached across the table, his hand brushing against hers. Sparks ignited, sending a rush of warmth through her. The air crackled with tension, and suddenly, she felt the weight of the unspoken feelings looming over their partnership. But before she could respond, the moment slipped away. They both seemed to retreat, laughter bridging the space that had just been filled with something electric. Yet that night, Sarah couldn't shake the thought that there was more between them than just friendship. Eventually, the day of their community event arrived, a culmination of weeks of teamwork, effort, and dedication. Banners hung proudly, adorned with the bright colors of their campaign. Volunteers buzzed with excitement as families began to trickle in, filling the space with laughter and chatter. As the event unfolded, Sarah maneuvered through the crowd, connecting with families, shaking hands, and offering words of encouragement. She felt the importance of every interaction, the profound impact this event could have. When she caught sight of Michael across the room, he was engaging a group of teenagers, drawing laughter with his charismatic stories. A sense of pride washed over her. They had done this together. They were making a difference, reminding her of the power they had always had. As the day drew to a close, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. Families were signing up for resources and support as smiles spread across their faces. But just as the excitement faded, an elderly woman approached Sarah. "Thank you," she said, her voice shaky yet strong. The sincerity in her eyes made Sarah's heart swell. The two shared a moment of connection that encompassed everything they had worked for. It was this, her heart whispered, this was what purpose felt like. Later, as the event wound down and the crowd began to thin, Sarah found Michael at the edge of the room, gazing out at a setting sun filtering through the windows. She walked over, feeling drawn to him. "That was incredible," she said, her voice quiet yet filled with sincerity. He turned to her, that same sparkle in his eye as they shared a moment of contentment. "I couldn't have done this without you, Sarah." Their connection deepened, a magnetic pull drawing them closer. The weight of the unspoken words hovered in the air when suddenly, Michael took a step forward, looking deeply into her eyes. "I've been wanting to say this for a while," he started, his voice low. Before he could finish, a call from a volunteer broke the moment, pulling them back into the present. "Hey," they both chuckled, the spell momentarily broken. But as they moved to help, Sarah felt more certain than ever. This journey with Michael had transformed both of them. Months rolled on and the outreach program grew. Yet those unspoken feelings lingered, subtle moments weaving a delicate thread between them. As they worked side by side, the connection solidified, not only as partners in a worthy cause, but as friends navigating the complexities of a deeper bond. The culmination of their efforts came when they were offered a grant, opening doors for even greater outreach opportunities, for more support, wider networks, and clear paths to help families in need. That evening, as they celebrated at a local eatery, the mood was electric. As the news sunk in, cheers erupted around the table, but Sarah felt a quiet moment with Michael. With the sunlight filtering in, she turned to him. "We did this together, didn't we?" He smiled, that familiar, mischievous glint returning. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for." As they shared laughter and the warmth of friendship, the undercurrents of their connection hummed beneath the excitement. That night, Sarah made a decision. She would not let fear hold her back any longer. It was time to speak up. A week later, under the expansive night sky dotted with stars, Sarah finally found the moment. Sitting on a bench outside the community center after another successful event, she turned to Michael. He looked at her, his expression curious but guarded. "Sure." I know we've been focused on our work, but there's something I've been feeling, something more than just partnership, she admitted, her heart racing. His eyes widened, surprise flaring, but then a smile broke through. And in that moment, time seemed to suspend, holding them in a delicate embrace. They leaned closer, their shared laughter gently fading into a profound silence filled with possibilities. As their eyes met, everything else faded into the background. Their hard work, the challenges they had faced, all of it seemed trivial compared to the moment blossoming before them. Maybe we can find out what this means together, he whispered, his voice warm and inviting. With no hesitation, Sarah leaned in. In that beautiful moment under the starlit sky, feelings that had been growing and shifting coalesced into something magnificent as their lips met a promise of what lay ahead. And as they pulled apart, breathless and grinning, they knew they weren't just partners in positive change. They had ignited a spark between them that would propel their journey into uncharted territory. Together, they would navigate their future, a partnership bound by something far greater than they had ever imagined. The heavy rain pelted against the window, creating a rhythmic soundtrack that matched Sarah's racing heart. It was a dull Wednesday afternoon, and the buzz of her office was muted, the kind of day where everything felt slow and heavy. She was lost in her thoughts when the sound of an incoming email broke her concentration. She glanced at her inbox and her breath caught. It was from Jason, her former mentor, and it appeared to be urgent. Sarah's heart thumped like a drum. It had been years since she'd heard from him, and she couldn't shake the mix of excitement and dread. What could he possibly want? She hesitated for a moment, torn between curiosity and anxiety. Her fingers hovered over the mouse, then clicked to open the email. "Hey Sarah," it began. "Hope you're well. I have something important to discuss." The words felt like a jolt of electricity, sending waves of uncertainty through her. Why now? What could be so pressing? Jason had guided her through many tough times in her career, but those days felt like a lifetime ago. Just as she started to compose a cautious reply, another message popped up from him. This one was more compelling. "It's about a direct order I need you to follow." Direct order. The phrase hung in the air like a mysterious presence, sending chills through her. What did he mean? In their history, Jason had never been so forceful. She felt a blend of fear and excitement swirl inside her, but the urgency called for action. With her heart pounding, she typed back, "I can meet." He replied almost instantly, "Let's say tomorrow at 3 p.m. The cafe had always been their favorite meeting spot, a charming little place they had spent countless hours discussing projects, dreams, and plans for the future. As Sarah stared at the screen, anxiety bubbled beneath the surface. What kind of urgency could possibly draw Jason back into her life? The next day arrived, and the rain had turned to a light drizzle, casting a moody ambience over the city. As Sarah stepped into the cafe, the familiar scent of coffee and baked goods enveloped her, and for a moment nostalgia washed over her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the tension gripping her. Jason was already seated at a corner table, his brow furrowed, fingers tapping nervously against the polished wood. His demeanor was more serious than she remembered, a far cry from the effortless charm he once exuded. As she approached, he stood up, an intense look in his eyes. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice steady but edged with urgency. Sarah asked, scanning his expression. His gaze bounced between her and the door as if he were afraid someone might overhear. "There's a crisis in our community. A shelter for women and children is facing closure due to funding issues, and I've been asked to lead a campaign to save it." Sarah's heart plunged. She had spent years honing her skills in nonprofit management, but she had also distanced herself from that world, feeling overwhelmed by everything. She felt the weight of the world packing itself on her shoulders. Yes, they're not just numbers, they're lives. The conviction in his voice resonated with her, but doubt wormed its way in. She remembered the struggles she faced in her last position, burnout, criticism, and the heavy toll on her mental health. "I'm not sure I can do this, Jason." He leaned in closer, lowering his voice, urgency coiling around his words. "That's exactly why I need you. You have the knowledge, the passion, you care." The fire in his words ignited something deep within her. She wanted to argue, to shrink back into her comfortable routine, but the faces of those who needed help, the children, the mothers, loomed in the back of her mind. She asked softly, anxiety creeping in. "Because you understand the stakes," he replied, his eyes piercing into hers. "These women can't afford to wait." His words twisted in her chest, amplifying her internal conflict. She wanted to help but felt unsure. What if she couldn't deliver? "Take a few days to think about it," Jason continued, returning to a more neutral tone. "But the clock is ticking." The weight of his words pressed heavily against her. The slowly rising anxiety shifted into determination. Maybe this was a chance to redeem herself, to break past the walls she had built. As they parted ways, Sarah's mind buzzed with thoughts and emotions. She returned home feeling both anxious and exhilarated. The flicker of hope and dread danced together like the flames of a candle. That night, Sarah sat with a cup of tea, reviewing every detail of the conversation. She thought of her path as a leader, the inspiration she had once embodied. Could she find that part of herself again? The idea of the shelter closing haunted her. Faces of mothers and children flickered through her mind like a movie reel. After much contemplation, she opened her laptop and began researching the shelter. Stories surfaced powerful narratives of mothers who had fought against overwhelming odds, seeking refuge and safety for their children. Each story was a reminder of their struggles, tugging at the fibers of her heart. By morning, she found herself reaching for her phone. A decision had taken root. "I'm in," she texted Jason. His reply was immediate, "Thank you." When she arrived, he was already there, his enthusiasm infectious. "You have no idea how relieved I am. We have so much to accomplish," he said as they settled at the table, tapping furiously on her laptop. They dove into planning, sketching out timelines, setting goals, and arranging meetings. The energy between them crackled, a mix of determination and a reawakening connection. As the plan solidified, so did their dynamic. They began attending community meetings, training volunteers, and soliciting donations. The world seemed to come alive again, filled with purpose and collaboration. But amidst the busy schedule, Sarah felt that familiar attraction to Jason simmer beneath the surface. Hours turned to days, and soon they were deep into the trenches of fundraising. They hosted events, secured local businesses' support, and connected with sympathetic organizations. Every small win propelled them forward, and Sarah's confidence began to bloom. But with every shared moment of laughter, she felt the tension grow, a magnetic pull she could no longer ignore. Late one evening, as they prepped for a fundraising event in her apartment, Jason paused, looking at her intently. "You've really changed, Sarah." Her cheeks flushed, words caught in her throat. He moved a little closer, his voice low. "You're doing it." The air was thick with unsaid words. She looked down, avoiding his gaze, suddenly fearful of the connection brewing between them. But before she could speak, he continued. "It's more than just the work, isn't it?" Her heart raced. Did he really mean that? "There's a lot on my mind, Jason," he repeated softly. "This feels different. It feels real, and I think we're both feeling it." A rush of relief washed over her. They could hold off on that discussion, but it lingered in the back of her mind, demanding her attention. Weeks passed as they rolled out the campaign, and everything seemed to surge ahead. They began to see the fruits of their labor. Donations poured in, and the community rallied around them. The voices of mothers and children became louder, the anticipation of change palpable in the air. However, despite the wins, Sarah still felt a tug of unease. One night, as the campaign reached its peak, Sarah collapsed on her bed, overwhelmed by emotions. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. What if they fell short? What if the shelter didn't survive? With a deep breath, she grabbed her phone and dialed Jason. He answered almost instantly, his voice calming her racing thoughts. "No," she admitted, tears forming in her eyes. "What if we don't succeed?" "Hey, listen to me," he said firmly. "We've done amazing work together. We're not guaranteed success, but we're making an impact. The fact that you care enough to worry shows just how invested you are. That's where it starts, and I won't let you down." His words washed over her like sunshine breaking through clouds, and she felt the heaviness begin to lift. "Thank you," he paused, letting the silence rest between them. "You know, I've always respected your heart and drive. It's what makes you exceptional. But this isn't just about the shelter, it's about both of us." "Yeah," she agreed softly, her heart racing again. With that resilience bolstered, they moved forward, pushing through the final weeks of the campaign. Each meeting and every interaction felt charged with possibility and hope. The countdown to the final fundraising gala began, and the stakes were higher than ever. On the night of the event, the venue was beautifully adorned, the community pouring in with smiles and laughter, filled with hope for the future. Sarah and Jason milled about, greeting guests and sharing stories. Everything felt electric, and Sarah could sense the weight of responsibility start to lift. Midway through the evening, while mingling with supporters, Sarah caught Jason's eye across the room. He motioned for her to come over. As she approached, his eyes sparkled brighter than the chandelier above. "We're doing it, Sarah. This is real," he beamed, a mixture of pride and excitement flashing in his gaze. Sarah exclaimed, returning his grin. Then in that moment of shared triumph, they both felt it. The gravity of their connection strengthened, enveloping them like a warm embrace. The atmosphere around them shifted as if time had momentarily paused. Jason leaned closer, excitement mingling with something deeper. "We're not just partners in this work." Before he could finish, a loud cheer erupted from the crowd, the door opening to reveal a surprise guest, a local celebrity who had come to show support. The moment slipped away, leaving both of them breathless and wanting. As the night unfolded, Sarah and Jason worked side by side, the conversations fluttering like butterflies around them. The energy was contagious, people leaning in, eagerly sharing their stories of hope. And through it all, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something beautiful. Finally, as the evening came to a close, guests began to disperse, and the weight of exhaustion settled over Sarah. She leaned against the podium, catching her breath as Jason approached her again. "Tonight was incredible," he said, his expression radiating joy mixed with something deeper. She paused, her heart in her throat. "Absolutely," he replied, his eyes holding hers, "and I think there's more to explore." In that moment of intimacy, Sarah felt all the walls she had built begin to crumble. She took a breath, letting vulnerability wash over her. He asked, a teasing smile dancing on his lips. She took another step closer. This, she whispered, us. Jason's expression softened, his gaze locking on hers. I felt it for a while now, but I didn't want to say anything because of everything going on. The sincerity between them ignited a profound connection, blazing bright and undeniable. In that moment, every ounce of doubt and hesitation faded away, leaving behind the promise of new beginnings. Taking a chance, Sarah reached for his hand, fingers intertwining in a gesture that felt both right and terrifying all at once. Then let's not waste time, she said softly. Jason's smile widened, and in that moment they both knew that whatever came next together, they could face it. As they stood hand in hand, surrounded by the fading echoes of laughter and joy, Sarah realized that this journey with Jason had become far more than she ever expected. It was about community, love, and the incredible strength they had found together. The future stretched ahead of them, bright and full of possibility, waiting for them to seize it together. The sound of her phone buzzing sliced through the silence of Emily's dimly lit apartment, jolting her from a deep concentration as she scribbled notes for yet another report. The glow from the screen illuminated her tired face. It was a text message from Mark, an old colleague she hadn't heard from in ages. Her heart raced, a mix of nostalgia and curiosity flooding her mind. Hey Emily, can we talk? Urgent. The word felt like a heavy weight pressing down on her spine. What could he possibly want that was urgent enough to reach out after all this time? Her chest tightened. Mark had always been a strong presence in her career, someone who pushed her to excel. She couldn't shake the feeling that this email might lead her into something unexpected. Taking a deep breath, she clicked on the message. Emily, I hope you're doing well. I need you for a project. It's critical for our community. Can we meet tomorrow? There it was, a blend of urgency and authority that sent chills down her spine. Could she really step back into that world just when she thought she had moved on? In previous years, Emily had worked tirelessly in social causes, but the grind had taken its toll. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, wrestling with indecision. After a moment, she typed back, I'm available. Mark's reply was almost instantaneous. As the morning unfolded, Emily felt as if she were on an emotional roller coaster. Memories swirled in her mind, late nights at the office, brainstorming sessions that could push anyone to the brink. What did Mark want now? What could possibly be urgent enough to pull her back into that tumultuous world? When the clock struck 2, she found herself standing outside the familiar cafe, raindrops splattering against the pavement, some catching the light like fleeting moments of joy. Opening the door, the warm scent of coffee and pastries enveloped her, stirring up a flood of old memories. And there, seated at a corner table, was Mark. He looked up, his expression intense, making her heart race. Thanks for coming, he said, his voice steady yet laced with urgency. Emily asked, scanning the environment for signs of tension. He leaned in, his eyes narrowing as if afraid someone might overhear. We're facing a crisis with the youth shelter downtown. Funding has been cut and they're about to close their doors for good. As he laid it all out, Emily's heart sank. She had devoted years to helping marginalized communities, but after her last experience, she swore she'd never put herself in that position again. The emotional weight of nonstop advocacy had worn her down to the bone. She questioned, her voice trembling with the fear she dared not voice. Because you're one of the best I've ever worked with, he stated, leaning closer, his sincerity radiating. You know how to motivate people, how to get them involved in something bigger than themselves. Emily felt her pulse quickening. The desperation in his voice seeped into her bones, filling her with dread and responsibility. She whispered, uncertainty clawing at her. Doubt yourself if you want, Mark said, his voice firm yet comforting. But I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe you could handle it. The weight of his words settled heavily in her stomach. The faces of the children in that shelter flashed before her eyes, each one a reminder of the urgency. She remembered the countless nights she had spent volunteering, the laughter shared, but also the desperate cries for help. A well of emotion bubbled up inside her. Okay, I'll do it, I'm in, she said, surprising even herself. The moment she uttered those words, she felt a fierce determination wash over her. Mark's face lit up, relief flooding his features. Thank you, we start brainstorming tomorrow. The conversation rushed by, a flurry of plans and ideas igniting a fire within her once again. They spent hours outlining strategies for funding, community outreach, and timelines. The tension that had gripped her slowly transformed into empowerment, the possibilities swelling before them. As they finalized their plans, Emily felt a mix of excitement and dread. She was back in the game, thrust into a battle that mattered deeply. But even amidst her passion, a small seed of doubt lurked in the background. What if the impact was too great and she failed? That night, Emily laid awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of her decision pressing on her chest. She remembered all the sleepless nights that had haunted her during her last campaign, the exhaustion, the burnout. It had pushed her into a corner she didn't want to revisit. But deep down, she knew she couldn't walk away from this. The stakes were too high. The next day, as she sat at her desk, her phone chimed. It was a message from Mark, ready to kick this off. Her heart raced as she typed a quick response. With each step toward the shelter that afternoon, she felt a tide of emotions swell. The familiar street signs loomed overhead, memories flooding her senses. The opening of the shelter's doors welcomed her back, each creak and groan echoing the lives that depended on what happened next. As she stepped inside, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. Volunteers were bustling around, their faces painted with determination. She saw Mark nearly jump out of his skin as he greeted her. "Welcome back, as ready as I'll ever be," she replied, forcing a smile. Together they gathered the volunteers, knowing how crucial this first meeting was. They launched into discussions, sharing stories and strategies, igniting a newfound passion in everyone present. Emily found herself energized, buoyed by the collective drive that surrounded them. Their goals were ambitious, but the sense of community was palpable. Over days filled with frantic energy, they rallied support, organizing events, reaching out to local businesses and spreading the word. She sensed a shift, an awakening in the community that hadn't existed moments before. The more she engaged with others, the more her doubt faded away. One evening, as they were winding down after a long day of preparation, Emily found herself wrapped in a moment of vulnerability with Mark. She asked, searching his eyes for reassurance. "Absolutely," Mark said, his gaze unwavering. "You're the heart of this campaign. People trust you." Her chest fluttered at his words. Somehow the intensity of their shared mission had created a bond, a connection she hadn't anticipated. For every moment they spent working together, the laughter and joy wrapped them closer, pushing aside her fears. Week after week, the campaign soared. They hosted a fundraising event that outperformed their expectations, a testament to their hard work. Emily felt something shift within her, an awakening of purpose as donations poured in, bringing the shelter closer to stability. But amidst their victory, the tension between her and Mark grew. Shared glances lingered just a moment too long, and the air buzzed with unspoken emotion. Emily's heart raced every time she caught him watching her intently, yet that fear of vulnerability held her back. One evening, after another successful event, Emily found herself waiting for Mark at the usual cafe. Time felt suspended. When he walked in, he looked almost different, energized and intense, and a flutter of anticipation coursed through her veins. "Hey," he said, leaning on the table. Panic flickered in the back of her mind. "Nothing's wrong, he hesitated, searching for the right words. Emily's breath caught in her throat as her heart raced. "Definitely," he said, his voice dropping to a softer tone. "We've shared more than just work." The moment hung heavy between them, the world fading away as they became enveloped in the undeniable tension. But doubt crept in. What would it mean for their work, for the campaign? "I don't want to jeopardize this," she said, her words barely a whisper. "Emily," he replied, leaning in further, the sincerity in his eyes holding her captive. "We can separate our personal lives from our work." The intensity of his gaze made her pulse quicken, and suddenly everything became clear. She wanted to take that leap, to step into this uncharted territory with him. Before she could think, she leaned in closer. "Then let's explore it," she whispered, their lips barely inches apart. The moment felt monumental, thrilling, and terrifying, but the panic that surged through her heart transformed into hope. They crossed that unspoken line, uniting not only as partners in their cause, but as potential partners in life. Days turned into weeks, and the campaign reached its pinnacle with the shelter's reopening ceremony. Emily looked around, pride swelling in her heart as she realized everything they had sacrificed had paid off. Gratitude poured in from families that had once been on the brink of despair. With Mark by her side, she delivered a speech that resonated through the crowd, filled with emotion and urgency. She shouted, her voice carrying the message of hope through the air. The crowd erupted in cheers, and as she looked over at Mark, she saw the admiration in his eyes. But as the excitement of the day began to wane, uncertainty crept back in. Would everything return to normal once the rush faded? Could they truly navigate both their personal relationship and their mission? That night, as they unwound over glasses of wine, she turned to him. Mark chuckled softly, nudging her playfully. "Now we plan our next steps." But the thought of not addressing their budding relationship nagged at her. "But us," he paused for a moment, then took her hand, his touch sending shivers down her spine. And just like that, she felt a wave of comfort wash over her. They could forge their own path, one that intertwined both their passions and personal lives. The uncertainty was still there, but now the fear left her heart. As the months rolled on, Emily and Mark navigated the complexities of their partnership and their shared commitment to the community. They became stronger together, celebrating victories while learning to tackle the challenges that arose. Emily discovered that the emotional labor of advocacy was lighter when shared. Through the laughter, tears, and unyielding determination, they built a foundation that would define their future. In every challenge they faced, Emily no longer felt that familiar weight of isolation. Instead, she was bolstered by the fierce strength they drew from one another. As they walked hand in hand through the community they had fought so hard to uplift, Emily felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over her. It was more than just their shared mission. It was about understanding the beauty of connection, a love that had blossomed through collaboration, trust, and shared aspirations. It was in that journey together, through the unexpected twists and turns of life, that Sarah realized she had not just found her way back into the world of advocacy, but also into the realm of love. And in that beautiful dance between their personal and professional lives, she understood that they were meant to navigate it all together. The soft ping of her phone sliced through the quiet of the empty room, drawing Mia's attention away from the stack of paperwork that had consumed her for hours. She glanced at the screen, an unexpected rush of adrenaline hitting her. It was a message from Liam, a name she hadn't seen in her inbox for years. The last time they'd spoken was a few years back, a casual conversation over coffee that had faded into distant memory. "Hey Mia, can we talk? Urgent." The word hung heavily in the air, echoing in her mind. What could he need that was so pressing? They had shared a history, a passionate friendship that had fizzled under the weight of life's demands, but now the intrigue of his message pulled her in. With trembling fingers, she opened his email, and as she read the subject line, her breath caught in her throat. Mia had never known Liam to be the type to issue orders. He was always laid back, easygoing, someone who made decisions on the fly, but this felt different. Her heart raced as she opened the email, curiosity battling the fear swelling in her chest. "Mia, I hope you're doing well. I've got a situation with the community center that requires immediate attention. I need you on board. Can we meet at Cafe Rose tomorrow?" Cafe Rose, their old meeting spot filled with memories of laughter, brainstorming, and heated debates. The thought of stepping back into that space filled her with anticipation and dread. Could she really dive back into that world? Part of her wanted to say no, to ignore the call, but another part, the part that had once thrived on activism and community involvement, was tempted by the challenge. She took a deep breath and typed back, "I can meet." His reply came almost instantly. The following day arrived, the sun shining brightly, casting a warm glow that seemed at odds with the storm brewing inside her. As she approached Cafe Rose, memories flooded her mind, the laughter, the passionate conversations about making a difference. She hesitated for a moment at the door, unsure of what lay ahead. Stepping inside, the familiar aroma of coffee wrapped around her, and she spotted Liam sitting in their usual corner. He looked more serious than she remembered, his brow furrowed, a tightness in his jaw. When he saw her, relief washed over his features, but the urgency in his eyes didn't fade. "Thanks for coming, Mia," he said, his voice steady but strained. She slid into the seat across from him, her heart thumping loudly in her chest. "We're facing a huge crisis at the community center," he began, his hands clenching into fists as he spoke. "The funding has been cut completely, and without immediate action, we could lose it." The reality of his words washed over her like a cold wave. Memories of the community center flooded her mind, children running in and out, families finding support, the laughter that filled its walls. The thought of it closing struck a chord deep within her. "I need you to help lead the campaign to save it," he said, his voice firm. "You have experience, and more importantly, people trust you." She felt a twinge of panic, but "Liam, I've been out of that world for a while." He leaned forward, eyes piercing into hers. "These families can't wait, and neither can we. I'm giving you a direct order to join me." It was as if a switch flipped inside her. Those words, direct order, evoked feelings she had buried for years. How could she turn her back on the community she had loved so deeply? But doubt clawed at her. She thought of the late nights, the exhaustion, the toll it had taken on her mind and body. Could she really step back into that role? "Let me think about it," she said finally, surprising herself. But deep down, she knew she was already leaning toward the yes. "Take your time, but understand the urgency." After their meeting, Mia walked home, her mind swimming with thoughts. She was torn between fear and the thrill of possibility. The community center was more than a building, it represented hope for so many. Could she step back into that world and make a difference again? That night, as she tossed and turned in her bed, the uncertainty gnawed at her. The faces of the families and children she had once fought for swirled through her mind, begging her to take action. Flashbacks of her past came flooding in, the sense of purpose, the joy of advocacy, the passion she had once embraced wholeheartedly. In a moment of clarity, she opened her laptop and began to research the current situation at the community center. Stories poured out, families struggling to make ends meet, children who relied on after-school programs for safety and support. The deeper she dove, the more determined she became. By sunrise, a decision crystallized in her mind. She took a deep breath, her fingers shaking as she typed a message to Liam. "I'm in." The reply was immediate. "Fantastic." As she arrived at the community center, the sun was shining, but she felt a heaviness in her chest. This was the moment that would determine everything. The familiar facade greeted her as she walked in, memories seeping from the walls, but a sense of urgency hung in the air. Everything felt more fragile than ever. When she entered, she saw Liam huddled with a group of volunteers, a mix of concern and determination etched on their faces. He looked up and smiled as she walked in, the tension in his posture easing slightly. "Thank you for coming, Mia," he said, moving toward her. Soon they were deep in conversation, outlining key strategies and brainstorming ideas. Mia felt the old fire ignite within her, passion replacing doubt. As they strategized, her confidence grew. Maybe she really could make a difference again. Days passed and their campaign took off. They organized fundraising events, reached out to local businesses for support, and began getting the word out in the community. With each step forward, Mia could feel the community rallying behind them. But with every victory, the tension between her and Liam simmered beneath the surface, creating a magnetic pull she couldn't ignore. One evening, after a successful fundraiser, Mia found herself sitting at a park with Liam, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The city buzzed around them, filled with laughter and life, but a silence settled between them as they exchanged glances. Before she could second-guess herself, she leaned in closer. "You know, I've really enjoyed working with you again." Liam's gaze softened, the warmth in his eyes making her heart flutter. "I feel the same way, Mia. You've always had that ability to breathe life into a project." There it was again, the connection, a mix of admiration and something deeper. As they drew closer, she felt her heart racing, but fear tangled with desire. Was this the right time to explore what lay beneath the surface? Just as she was about to speak, a loud laugh echoed from the nearby playground, snapping her back to reality. They both laughed awkwardly, the moment slipping through their fingers like sand. But they continued to work tirelessly together, their efforts culminating in a huge community event to raise awareness and funds for the shelter. As the date approached, excitement buzzed in the air, and the turnout exceeded anyone's expectations. On the day of the event, families crowded the park, booths were bustling, and laughter filled the air. But amidst the joy, Mia felt a growing tension. Everything they had worked for hinged on this day, and the weight pressed heavily on her shoulders. Liam found her just as the event kicked off, his face lit with excitement. "We did it," she asked, a knot tightening in her stomach. "Hey," he soothed, taking her hands in his. "Regardless of the outcome, we've raised awareness and brought the community together." His touch sent electric currents through her, and she drew in a shaky breath. "You're right, let go of the fear," he urged, his eyes locked on hers. "Trust this moment." The event went on, showcasing a sea of smiles and hope. They engaged with families, shared their stories, and celebrated the community spirit that had formed. For the first time, Mia felt a deep connection with Liam, not just as colleagues, but as partners in a mission. Yet that night, as they packed up the remnants of the event, the tension returned. The evening had been a success, but the air hummed with something unspoken. Liam asked, turning to her with that familiar intensity she had grown to love. "Of course," she replied, her stomach fluttering. They found a quiet corner beneath the stars, the warmth of the evening wrapping around them like a blanket. "I've been thinking," Liam began, his voice steady but laced with uncertainty. Mia took a deep breath, knowing that whatever he said next would change everything. "Me too," she admitted, heart racing. "What we have, this project, it means so much to me, but it means even more because of you." Her pulse quickened as he stepped closer, their breaths mingling in the night air. "I want us to explore this connection." The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. The moment stretched into infinity as their eyes locked, vulnerability threading through the air. "I feel the same," she whispered, exhilaration pulsing through her. Before she could overthink it, she leaned in, closing the space between them. Their lips met, trailing sparks of hope and new beginnings. Every moment of doubt evaporated as emotion flooded through her, igniting everything they had worked for. When they pulled away, breathless and clear-headed, Mia realized what they had forged together, an unstoppable connection intertwined with their shared vision. From that day forward, they navigated both their relationship and commitment to the community. Together, they embraced challenges, celebrating victories hand in hand, with laughter echoing in their hearts. Mia discovered that fighting for the community was lighter now that she wasn't alone. Each day brought new challenges, but she faced them all with Liam by her side. They became stronger together, breathing life into not only the shelter, but into each other. So, as the sun rose over the horizon of their newfound unity, Mia embraced the magic of this partnership, a bond forged through shared passion, commitment, and the courage to love. They had pulled each other from the shadows and into a world filled with hope. Together, they knew they could conquer anything the future held. The sound of her phone buzzing broke the heavy silence of the late afternoon. Emma glanced at the screen, her heart jumping. It was a message from Jason, her former boss and mentor, someone she hadn't spoken to in over a year. "Can we talk?" A wave of memories washed over her, the warmth of past camaraderie mixed with a twinge of anxiety. What could he possibly want that was so urgent? Emma hadn't expected to hear from him again. Their paths had diverged, but she could still feel the pull of their shared history. She hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. Then she opened his message. That phrase sent a shiver down her spine. It felt like a command that cut through her usual routine. Emma had always respected Jason's authority, but this was different. His sudden urgency felt heavy, almost suffocating. Taking a deep breath, she replied, "I'm available." His response was immediate, filled with a fervor that made her pulse quicken. "Meet me at the cafe on 5th at 3 p.m. What could possibly warrant such a serious tone? Questions buzzed in her mind as she prepared to meet him. It had been a rough year, a year of grappling with her own choices and the exhausting grind of her job. The thought of getting pulled back into something overwhelming was daunting. As the hour approached, Emma stood outside the cafe, a small, cozy corner that always felt like a second home. She pushed the door open and was swept in by the familiar aroma of coffee and baked goods. But there was something off about the atmosphere today, a tension she couldn't quite pinpoint. Jason was already at the table, his face serious, the lines of worry etched deep across his forehead. "Emma," he said, standing as she approached, "thank you for coming." She asked, a sense of urgency creeping into her voice. "We're facing a crisis at the nonprofit," Jason began, his hands clenching on the table. "Funding has been cut drastically, and without immediate action, we risk closing our doors." As he spoke, Emma felt her heart drop. The nonprofit had always been more than just an organization. It was a lifeline to countless individuals in need. She remembered the laughter of children in the after-school programs, the mothers seeking refuge, the community events that had brought everyone together. She asked, her voice nearly a whisper. "I need you to lead this project," he pressed, leaning closer, urgency washing over him. "You have the experience, the skills. I can't do this alone, Emma." She felt a mix of fear and responsibility swirl inside her. "But it's been a while since I've been involved in something like this," she replied, fatigue creeping back into her thoughts like a shadow. Jason's eyes softened, but determination lingered in his voice. "That's why you're perfect for this. You can connect with people, inspire them. We need that spark now more than ever." His words hung in the air, laden with an intensity that pulled at her heartstrings. The memories of their team projects flooded back, the late nights filled with laughter and brainstorming, and the successes they had celebrated. Suddenly, she found herself wrestling with her choices. Could she step back into that light and make a difference again? Emma felt a surge of nostalgia mixed with fear. As she saw the urgency in Jason's eyes, she realized this was about more than just the organization. It was about lives. The weight of his words clenched around her heart like a vice. Taking a deep breath, she made her decision. "Okay, I'll do it." A smile broke through Jason's serious demeanor, relief washing over him like a wave. "Thank you. We start working on this tomorrow." As she walked home that evening, a swirl of emotions overwhelmed her. She felt terrified yet exhilarated. This was a significant commitment, but the thought of everything they could achieve ignited a spark deep within her. A chance to rekindle her passion, to fight for something she believed in. It felt like a long-lost piece of herself awakening. The next day, she arrived at the office, the familiar scent of coffee wrapping around her. The walls were adorned with motivational posters that had once fueled her spirit, but today they felt like ghosts taunting her with memories. She found Jason in the conference room, surrounded by a few volunteers. "Hey, glad you're here," he said, his usual easy smile returning. As they began laying out their plan, Emma felt a wave of energy surge through her. The pressure she had felt moments ago melted away. They brainstormed ideas for funding, outreach strategies, and community involvement. Each idea sparked hope and possibility, setting her soul ablaze with excitement. "Together, we can bring this community together," Jason said, conviction layering his words. Days turned into weeks as they plunged into their campaign with fervor. They organized fundraising events, reached out to local businesses for support, and drafted letters to send to potential donors. Emma's heart swelled with pride as she saw the community rally around them. The response was overwhelming. Yet with every small victory, an undercurrent of tension danced between her and Jason. Shared glances lingered a moment too long, unspoken words filled the spaces between them, creating an electric connection. Somewhere amidst the urgency of their mission, the lines separating their professional and personal lives began to blur. One evening, after a successful fundraiser, Emma and Jason gathered in the office to celebrate. Pizza boxes were scattered on the table, remnants of laughter and camaraderie echoing around them. As they shared stories, Emma caught Jason looking at her with admiration, a spark igniting within her. "You've really pulled this together," he said, his voice rich with respect. She felt a warmth spread through her at his compliment. "We make a great team," she replied, a nervous smile creeping onto her face, but deep down she felt the weight of his gaze. What was this chemistry growing between them? Could that connection actually lead to something more? The days rolled on, their project gaining momentum. Yet with every successful event, her feelings for Jason seemed to intensify, making her heart race in ways she had never imagined. But doubt still lingered. Was this the right time to explore something deeper? Would it complicate their mission? The following week, they held their grand community event. Families gathered, laughter echoed, and a sense of unity filled the air. Emma floated through the crowd, high on adrenaline, soaking in the joy they had helped create. She glanced over at Jason, who was chatting with local leaders, his presence magnetic. As he caught her gaze, he smiled a warm, genuine smile that sent electricity racing through her. The moment held a kind of weight that felt significant, but Emma pushed the thoughts aside. They were here for the community, not for personal distractions. As the event unfolded, a deep sense of fulfillment settled within her. For once, she felt she was part of something larger than herself, an energy that coursed through the crowd, reminding her of why she had devoted herself to this work. But just as the evening drew to a close, she felt a knot form in her stomach. The euphoria around them lingered, but what about the reality that awaited them? Later that night, they packed up together, laughter hanging in the air, but the weight of everything left unspoken pressed down on her like a lead ball. I think tonight was a huge success, Jason said, his eyes glimmering with excitement. Yeah, it was, she replied, but uncertainty flickered in her mind. But what happens next? Let's ride this wave for now, he suggested, leaning closer. Her heart raced. Here it was, the moment to confront the feelings bubbling beneath the surface. Jason hesitated for a moment, as if searching for the right words. It's about us, this connection we have. Before she could respond, he leaned in closer, and the world around them faded into the background. I care about you, Emma. Her breath caught in her throat. Absolutely, he said simply. Time suspended between them, tension swirling like the autumn leaves outside. This is all so new, she said softly. I know, Jason replied, his voice steady, but this feels real and it feels right. With every flicker of hope warming her heart, Emma felt the barriers begin to crumble. Me too, she whispered, casting aside the apprehension that had loomed over her. In that charged moment, she leaned in, their lips meeting slowly at first, then with the urgency of all the unsaid words. It felt electric, transformative, and understanding of what they could be together. When they pulled away, breathless and overwhelmed, Emma realized this was more than just a fleeting connection. It was a bond forged through the challenges they had faced, woven intricately into their shared passion for making a difference. In the months that followed, they balanced the complexities of their relationship while continuing to champion their cause. Together, they navigated challenges, celebrating victories and learning from setbacks. Their future felt inseparable, intertwined with the hope and determination they both carried. Emma felt lighter, knowing she was no longer alone in this fight. The love they cultivated deepened, blossoming alongside their mission. Each moment spent working together, every victory celebrated hand in hand, brought new layers to their connection. As they walked through the community they had fought tirelessly to uplift, Emma realized how profoundly connected they had become, both as partners in love and partners in purpose. And as they looked toward the horizon, there was an undeniable sense of hope swirling in the air, a promise of a brighter future forged by their determination and passion. In the end, it was not just about the campaign to save the nonprofit, but also about the life that awaited them together. A life filled with love, purpose, and the understanding that together they could conquer anything. The sound of her phone vibrating against the wooden table jolted Mia from her thoughts, scattering her half-done sketches across the surface. She glanced down, her heart skipping a beat when she saw the name on the screen. Liam, her old colleague. Last time they had spoken was during a hectic project a year ago, one filled with late nights and intense deadlines. She hadn't expected to hear from him again. Hey, can we talk? A rush of emotions flooded her. Urgent, the weight of that word pressed against her chest. What could be so pressing that it required her attention? A pang of worry mixed with curiosity twisted in her gut. With an uneasy breath, she opened the email. What she read made her pulse quicken. A chill ran down her spine. Liam had always been laid back, his approach relaxed. This felt different. She could feel the tension building, wrapping around her like a heavy blanket, thick with unanswered questions. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard as she contemplated responding. Did she really want to get dragged back into that world? The last year had been a whirlwind, a chaotic jumble of freelance gigs and trying to find herself after leaving the corporate grind. Taking a deep breath, her fingers finally moved. I'm available. The reply was almost instant. The hours passed like molasses as she anxiously paced her apartment. Her mind raced with possibilities. What could be so urgent? Did something happen at work? Did someone need her expertise for another project? Did he want to discuss something personal? As the clock edged closer to 4, she felt a knot forming in her stomach. When she arrived at the cafe, the bell chimed as she pushed the door open. Warm air greeted her, filled with the rich scent of coffee and the comforting hum of muted conversations. In the corner, Liam was seated, a storm of emotions swirling in his eyes as he noticed her approach. He was more serious than she remembered. Thanks for coming, he said, not standing up as he usually did. His tone was urgent, laced with an intensity that sent alarm bells ringing in her head. Mia asked, sliding into the chair across from him. I wouldn't reach out if it wasn't dire, he began, looking around as if the room held secrets. Her heart dropped. The shelter had been a vital resource in the community, a haven for families in need. She whispered, the color draining from her face. They are about to close due to lack of funding. They need an immediate fundraising campaign and I want you to lead it, he said, his voice a mixture of desperation and determination. What? I can't just jump back into this, Mia felt panic rising, the walls of doubt closing in. I haven't organized anything since I left the agency. But you know this community and you know how to get people to rally around a cause. I need you, Mia. I'm giving you a direct order to take charge. His gaze bore into hers, fiery and unwavering. The words, a direct order, resonated within her, igniting a spark. Mia remembered when she used to live for moments like these, the adrenaline, the teamwork, the thrill of making a difference. But her fears crept back in fears of burnout, of inadequacy. Liam, I just think about the families that will suffer if we don't act, he interjected, his voice steady but urgent. You have the power to help them. He was right, she thought, the weight of countless faces flashing through her mind. The children, their laughter, the way the shelter had offered hope to so many. With a deep breath, she nodded. Okay. Relief washed over him like the breaking of dawn. Great, we start tomorrow. Days passed in a blur of action and excitement. Mia threw herself into the project, rapidly organizing meetings, reaching out to local businesses, and setting up fundraising events. Each small victory revitalized her spirit and fueled her determination. Every so often, she'd catch a glimpse of Liam, his eyes filled with admiration and intensity that sent fluttering nerves through her. With every late-night brainstorming session and shared laugh, the space between them felt charged, as if the air hummed with unspoken words. One rainy evening after another successful meetup, as they reviewed plans at her kitchen table, the atmosphere shifted. Mia looked up to find Liam watching her, a look of contemplation etching his features. You're incredible at this, you know. A warmth spread across her cheeks, her heart racing. No, you're bringing people together, and this community needs that. You've reignited my passion. I can't thank you enough, he said, his voice low. His words made her heart stink with a mix of gratitude and something more profound. But before she could reply, a loud clap of thunder echoed outside as if the universe were shaking them from their moment. With a nervous laugh, she turned away, hoping to mask her fluttering emotions. Yeah, maybe you're right, he said, glancing out the window, then back at her, an intensity flaring in his eyes again. But Mia, about what's between us just then, a loud crash of thunder split the air and the power went out, plunging them into darkness. Heart pounding, Mia fumbled for her phone, flipping on the flashlight. I guess we'll have to continue this conversation another time, she managed, attempting to keep the mood light. But deep down, she felt the moment slip away. A connection dangled in the air, yet they both retreated, leaving the unspoken between them. They finished planning through the darkness, but the unanswered questions lay heavy like the storm brewing outside. The next morning, they launched the campaign with a community event full of energy and anticipation. Families arrived, their faces filled with hope, and Mia felt that familiar sense of purpose bloom within her. Together with Liam, they inspired everyone to contribute, to donate, to spread the word. The shift was palpable. People rallied, businesses began to show support, and enthusiasm surged. The shelter was suddenly a hot topic, conversations buzzing around town. But with every advancement, Mia's feelings for Liam grew, erupting into something powerful yet frightening. One quiet evening after a busy day, they found themselves on a walk in the park, the fading sun casting a golden glow around them. Silence settled as they ambled side by side, tension swirling in the air once more, undeniable and electric. Mia, Liam finally spoke, stopping to glance at her, his face serious. I've been meaning to tell you. Her heart raced, a moment of clarity washing over her. His gaze deepened, searching hers. I don't want to complicate what we've built, but you mean a lot to me. Just as she was about to reply, her phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the connection. She pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It was a message from one of the donors they were courting. Immediately, her thoughts shifted back to the project. I should reply to this, she said, the moment slipping through her fingers. They spent the rest of the evening discussing strategies for the shelter, but every time their eyes met, the weight of words left unsaid loomed over them. Days turned into weeks as the campaign progressed with renewed energy, their efforts bearing fruit. The shelter was rallying support, and the community's response was uplifting. Yet the tension between Mia and Liam ebbed and flowed like the tides, sometimes crashing against the shore, other times retreating quietly. One rainy night, with the shelter's reopening event approaching, they were finalizing the last-minute details at Mia's apartment. A storm rumbled outside, echoing the chaos in her heart. Liam asked, leaning against the doorframe, the warm light of the room casting a glow around him. She replied, enthusiasm bursting to the surface, but beneath it all lay that ever-present feeling, the magnetic connection sparking more each day. As they wrapped up, Mia felt the storm outside growing fiercer, rain pounding against the windows like the thrumming of her heart. We've got this, but Liam didn't appear as enthusiastic. His brow furrowed slightly, and for a moment he looked torn. He asked, her heart sinking. Despite all their progress, she feared he wanted to pull away. As they stood there, silence thickening the air, the lights flickered ominously. Shock flashed through her. What? But we've done so much already. Mia felt panic rising, tears prickling her eyes. The board wants to see solid numbers tonight. A heavy silence settled between them. The storm outside matched the turmoil within her. We need to organize a last-minute push. In that moment, fire ignited within her. Let's do it, but as they rushed to implement their emergency plan, the tension pulsing between them grew. The clock was ticking, every minute consumed by urgency, a race against time that could cost them the shelter and their deepest feelings for one another. As midnight approached and the weight of their mission threatened to crush her spirit, Mia found herself standing on the edge of an emotional precipice. Would they succeed in saving the shelter, or would both their hopes come crumbling down? Just as doubts began to creep in, she glanced over at Liam, catching a glimpse of determination mingled with something unspoken. Whatever happens, Mia, know that we did this together, he said, his voice steady, laden with unacknowledged emotion. Together, she echoed, the word vibrating between them, heavier than stone. But as the storm raged outside, they rushed into the night, each step into the unknown racing towards an uncertain future. both fighting for what they cared about yet poised on the edge of possibility, swallowed by the shadows of what could be. And just as the dawn approached, as their hopes hung delicately in the balance, both in their hearts and the fate of the shelter, one truth resonated above all else. The connection between them was deeper than either had ever dared to admit. As they stepped into a new day, they realized they were on the brink of change, both in the community they fought for and for the emotions they had yet to confront. The time for decisions was fast approaching, and everything was about to unravel, and they could only hope they were ready for whatever came next.